This is National 5 exam or prelim revision. It's the first unit and we're looking at non-calculator exam questions. We'll have a variety of questions here, fractions, algebraic fractions, factorising, multiplying out brackets, we'll have surds and indices and completing the square type questions. So a variety of questions that are here. Right, so what you should have done by now, you should have completed these questions. If you completed them, this will be the solutions to them that you'll have. You already have the answers, so if there's any issues, you can come and have a look at the solutions that are here. For those that don't have these questions out, freeze the video, try the questions and watch the solution. Right, so first one we've got is we're going to evaluate a mixed number fractions and we're going to subtract them. Right, the first thing I'm going to do is change them to top heavy. So 6 times 5 is 30 plus 1, 31. That's 31 over 5. I'm going to change this one to top heavy as well. So I'm going to subtract. That's going to be 6 plus 1 is going to be 7. And that's all going to be over 3. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to get the same denominator on the bottom. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just do it by kiss and smile. So I'm going to multiply across the way first of all. So that's going to give me 93 minus 35. And that's all going to be over, here's the smile bit, 5 times 3 will give me 15. So I'm going to subtract 35 from the 93, what I'll get is 58. 58 all over 15. Okay, so that there would be my final answer. Or if I wanted to change it into a mixed number, I'm going to divide 58 by 15, which will give me 3. That'll make 45, so I've got 13 left over, and I'm dealing with 15ths. So that's what I'm going to get there. So there's my final answer. So what we've got is we've got 1 mark for getting the denominator the same here. So it'll be 1 mark for there, 1 mark for getting our final answer. Either that one or that one there. Next question, we're on to question 2. Multiplying out the brackets and collecting like terms. 3 marks for this question here. Right, so various different ways that we can do this. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to split this first bracket. So I'm going to write the x here. After that I'm going to write everything that's in the second bracket. So I'm not really doing much work here. I'm then going to take the minus 4 and I'll put minus 4 there. And then I'm going to write whatever's in the second bracket again. Right, so and now I've just got single brackets to multiply out and gather up. Right, so multiplying this one out, I've got x cubed plus x squared minus 2x. Okay, that'll be my first mark. Minus 4 times x squared, so that'll be minus 4x squared. Minus 4 times x will give me minus 4x. And minus 4 times minus 2 going to give me a plus 8. Right, I'm going to gather up whatever I can. So I've only got this x cubed term, x squared terms there, so that's going to be minus 3x squared. X terms, I've got minus 2 and minus 4, that'll give me minus 6x, and I've just got a plus 8 at the end there. Right, so what we've got for marks for this one, we'll get 1 mark for getting any 3 terms right, so maybe these 3, another mark for getting the full thing multiplied out, and 1 further mark for getting the final answer that's there. Okay, so we'll go on to question 3. Right, question 3, we have to simplify down this algebraic fraction. So I can't see anything common on the top and the bottom at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to factorise to try to get 2 brackets the same that I can cancel out. That's the normal way this question's set out. Right, let's factorise the top line. Okay, so I see I've got x's there and I've got an x there. I'm going to take x out as a common factor. I'm going to check just to make sure I can get from there back to there by multiplying out the bracket. X times x gives me x squared. X times minus 4 gives me minus 4x. So I've got that right. I'm then going to factorise this 3-part thing. So this is a trinomial. So to factorise that out, I'm going to put it into 2 brackets. So first bracket, first part of the brackets is going to be x and x, because x times x gives me x squared. Now what I'm thinking about for the numbers that go here and here, I'm thinking of 2 numbers that multiply to get 20, but they've got a difference of 1. So it's not going to be 20 and 1, it's not going to be 10 and 2, so it's going to be 4 and 5 that I'm going to use. So I'm going to put these numbers in here. So there's 4 and there's 5. Right, so these two numbers multiply together to get a negative 20. So one's minus and one's plus. If I look here, the biggest number is the plus. So there we go, plus, and there's the minus. Right, so at the start what I'd said was that what I'd be looking to do in this type of question is get a bracket on the top and a bracket on the bottom that are the same. So I'll divide the top by x minus 4 and I'll get 1. I'll divide the bottom by x minus 4 and I'll get 1. So I'm really just simplifying down this fraction. What I've got left is x times 1, which is x, and 1 times x plus 5. And that's my final answer there. Marks for this question here, we're going to get 1 mark for the top there, 1 mark for getting that there, we'll get 1 mark for factorising out the trinomial, and 1 mark for getting the final answer correct. Okay, 3 marks for that question there. If you struggle with factorising trinomials, check one of my earlier videos out, because that's where I started by trying to factorise trinomials and making sure that pupils can do that. Let's move on. So question 4. Express 4 over root 8 with a rational denominator. All that really means is that I want to have my denominator without a root sign on it. Okay, so let's go ahead. So the way I'm going to do that is whatever root I see on the bottom, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by that root. What I'm doing there is I'm really multiplying by root 8 over root 8, which really just equals 1. So it doesn't really change it, although it looks different. Right, so let's work this out. So on the top I've got 4 root 8. On the bottom I'll write down square root of 64 when I multiply the two of them together. And what I'll go for after that, say that that's going to be 8. What I could have done is gone for, I know that root 8 times root 8 just goes to a straight 8 from there. I could have done that and just putting that in to show you how that works. Let's simplify this down, this fraction, okay? So I've got 4 on the top, 8 on the bottom. So what we can do with that is I'll divide the top and bottom by 4. So that'll leave me with root 8 on the top, and if I divide 8 by 4, that'll leave me with 2. Now if to put this in its simplest form, I know that root 8 is one of the surds I can simplify down. So what I'm going to do with root 8, I'm going to simplify that by saying it's root 4 times root 2. On the bottom I've got 2. Coming out of here, in particular this front part, the square number works out to be 2 root 2 all over 2. When I simplify that down for the last time, I can divide the top and bottom by 2. What it leaves me with is just root 2. Okay, so I'm going to get 1 mark for getting this part here. That's the first one that I'm going to get. I'm then going to get another mark for getting the 2 root 2 part coming out here. Whether you've included that up here somewhere or there. Final mark, third mark for that one there. Right, so that's the first 4 questions complete. Let's go to question 5. Right, question 5 here, it's a fractions question. Algebraic fractions and what we're going to divide. So we're dividing this fraction by that fraction. So the way I'm going to start that one off is I'm just going to use the flip and change method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the second fraction. Okay, let's get my pencil to work. Right then. So I'm going to flip the second fraction. Right, and that's over s. I'm going to flip it over, so I'm going to have 2s squared on the top. On the bottom, I've got t. So all I've done is flip that over. I'm going to change that sign from a divide to a times. I'm going to just multiply. Now when I multiply, I can multiply straight across the way, or what I can do to simplify down at this stage, I can divide the top by t and the top over here by t. So that gives me 1 and 1. I can see I've got an s down here, so I'm going to divide that by s. And this s here, if I divide s times s, or s squared, by s, I'm going to remove that power there. And I'm just going to have that to the power of 1. What I'll now do is just multiply straight across. So 5 times 1 times 2 gives me 10. 10s on the top. On the bottom, I've got 1 times 1, which just gives me 1. So my answer there must be 10s. Okay, so that's the answer for question 5. So again, a 3-mark question. So what we get is the first mark for getting that format there, so knowing how to deal with a division with the fractions. There'll be another mark for some of the cancellations down, so knowing how to cancel down, and a final mark for the final answer, 3 marks. Question 6, what we've got is an indices question. So I've tried to evaluate, so I've got to work out what the value of 8 to the power of 5 over 3 is going to be. So first thing that I would do with that would be to change it into root form. So remember the way that this stands here, this fraction, the root part is this part at the bottom. So just like a flower, the bottom part is the root. So I'm going to write it in that form there. I'm going to put my 8 inside the root sign. It's a cubed root, so it's going to be a 3 there, and the power is going to be a 5. So it's 8 to the power of 5, and then it will be the cube root of that. Now, the easiest way to evaluate or work this out would be to take the cube root of the 8 first, and then put it to the power of 5. So the cube root of 8, so which number times itself will give me 8. So 2 times 2 times 2 gives me 8, so that will be 2 to the power of 5. 2 to the power of 5, I'm just thinking about 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 gives me 32. So that's a 2-mark question for that one there. What we've got is the first mark really is for getting it into that form and understanding how to do that. Final mark for getting the answer. Question 7. Right, question 7, I have to evaluate just some fraction work. This type of question usually appears as the first type of question that you'll get in your National 5 non-calculator exam. So you need to make sure that you can deal with just normal fraction work. Right, let's start with this here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mixed number and change it to a top-heavy number. The way I do that is I do 2 times 9, which will give me 18, plus 2 gives me 20. And that's all over 9. Okay. What I'll do is for these fractions, I can multiply straight across the way, and I'll get 100 on the top. But what I'm going to do is I can see that I've got 12 on the bottom there, and I've got 20 on the top. They're both even numbers. They both divide by 4. So if I divide 4 into 12, I'm going to get 3. And if I divide 4 into 20, I'm going to get 5. So now my numbers are a bit simpler to work with, so I don't need to do any larger multiplication out. So I've got 5 times 5 will give me 25 on the top. On the bottom it's 3 times 9, which will just give me 27. So 25 over 27, can't simplify that down, that's my final mark. Right, so the marks in here, what we're going to get for will be, let's see, it will be for changing this to a mixed number. And finally, multiplying out and simplifying down if you have to simplify it. Okay. Right, question 8. Multiply out the brackets and collect like terms. Right, so this is just a double bracket, so we could use FOIL if that's what you're used to, or we can split it. I'll do it both ways and we can see how that works out, okay? So let me split it first, okay, like I did with the first question. So I've got 2x, I'm splitting this bracket out, and I'm just going to write this bracket down the way it is. In between here I've got a minus 5, so I'll put a minus 5 in there. So the parts from this bracket are splitting into 2 locations. That's going to be the 3x plus 1. And then I've just got single brackets to multiply out, and that should be a wee bit easier. So that's going to give me 6x squared, that's going to be plus 2x minus 15x minus 5. And all I need to do is to gather the middle terms up that I've got there, and that's going to be minus 13x minus 5. Okay, the other way I can do it is by FOIL. So that depends on how you've been taught. This way here works quite well, especially for the 3-part bracket and the last kind of term there. Right then, so let's do it by FOIL. Firsts, so that would be the first terms in the bracket. So that's what FOIL stands for. That's 6x squared. O would be for the outsides, so that will be that times that, which gives me plus 2x. I in FOIL stands for the insides, which is minus 15x, and then the L is the last term, so these two multiplied together, which gives me the minus 5. What I get there is just gathering up the terms like I've done before. So these answers are the same. The only thing that we're missing out when we do FOIL is this step here. Okay, right, so marks for this question here. We've got 2 marks that we're going to gain, and let's see where we're going to get them. So what we've got is we'll get some marks for multiplying out the brackets first. So multiplying out, so to about there. And then what we'll get is we'll get a final mark for this part here. So multiplying the brackets out and then simplifying and gathering the middle terms together. 2 marks. Right, we're on to question 9. Right, so question 9. What we have is express x squared minus 14x plus 44 in the form x minus a squared plus b. Okay, right, so let's go and do that. The way that I would work out a completing the square question, which this one is when we've got x squared on its own, we've only got one of them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to half that coefficient of x. So a half of minus 14 is minus 7. Now what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to put it into the brackets. So there's my first bracket. I'm going to also put it into that bracket there, and then I've got the plus 44 at the end. So as I say, that goes in there. That's the first thing, minus 7, and it also goes in there. Okay. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to square that out, which will be 49, so that's going to be minus 49, right, that becomes a positive, but with this minus, it gives me a minus 49, plus 44, and then at the end, I'm just going to gather things up. Gathering these together gives me minus 5. Okay, so marks for this here will be mark for getting this part here, and finally, mark for getting this part here. Okay. So sometimes I find that the way that this is laid out is a bit confusing. Sometimes it's got a plus in there, sometimes it's got a minus. Just do the work the way that your teachers taught you how to do it. This is the way I do it because I find that quite easy for myself to do. Okay, let's get to question 10. So what we've got is, we've got a surds question. So we're going to express this surd addition in its simplest form. Okay. Right, so usually when we do these kind of questions, there are some clues that kind of help us out. I think that there is going to help us, that root 10. But let's just simplify the surds down as far as we can go and see what we can do with that. So I can see that 40 as a surd, I could split that into a square number, which would be 4 and 10. So what I'll do is, I'll say that that's square root of 4 times the square root of 10 instead of root 40. This one here, I can't do anything really with that because that's as simple as I can make that, because I can't get a square number to multiply to get 10. And what I've got here is I've got 90. So again, I'm going to get a 10 coming out here. So if I think about a square number would be 9. 9 times 10 gives me 90. So square root of 9 times square root of 10 gives me the square root of 90. Right, let's simplify these down. So I've got 2 root 10 plus 4 root 10, which I've not really touched, plus, and remember the square root of 9 is 3, and then I've got root 10. So I'm going to gather these all up as they are. So how many root 10s have I got? I've got 2 here, I've got 4 there, and I've got 3 there. So in total, that's going to give me 9 root 10. Right, so marks for this, we've got 3 marks for this one. What we're getting is 1 mark here for the simplification of the 40, root 40, and 1 mark for the simplification of root 90. And then finally, pulling them together to there. That's our 3 marks. Right, 2 questions to go. An indices question, indices with fractions. So let's try and work this one out here. Right, so I've got to remember the laws and the rules of indices. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I'm going to multiply across on the top line, okay, on the numerator. So n to the 5 times 10n. Remember, the n's as if it's got a power of 1 sitting at it. So, and remember, if we're multiplying things with indices, I'm going to add the indices together. So like 1 here times 10 just gives me a 10. I've got n to the power of 5 plus 1. Okay, I generally wouldn't write it that way, but I'm going to show you how that's done. On the bottom, I've got 2n squared, and I'm sure I'll be able to cancel something out when I go ahead and do the next part. So that's n to the power of 6 all over 2n to the power of 2. Right, let's take this in some stages. Let's divide the 10 by 2, and what I should get out of that will be a 5 on the top. Okay, so it'll be 5n to the power of 6 all over n to the power of 2. Right, so remember when we were going back here, if I was multiplying things with indices, I'd add. If I'm going to divide things with indices, I'm going to subtract. So from here, what I've got is 5n, it's to the power of 6 minus 2. And all I'm going to do is just work that out. So 5n to the power of 4 is going to be my final answer. Right, so to get our marks for this question here, what I'm going to get is, first mark is going to be for multiplying out the top. I'm then going to get a mark for simplifying it down to here, and then finally a mark for getting the final answer that's there. Right, question 12, last question in this video. What I've got is, I've got an algebraic fraction, it's going to subtract, and I'm going to have to show it in its simplest form. Now this part here, all this is doing is just a bit of kind of maths speak, and what it's trying to do is just trying to make sure that you can't have 0 on the bottom here, or the question really is invalid. Okay, so what we're going to do is work on this part here, and this is the way you'd usually just see it in the classroom. Right, so what we're going to do is, I'm going to do a kiss and smile for the fractions with this one. So I'm going to multiply that times that, so that gives me 7x. I'm going to multiply this times this, so that's minus 3, okay? That's a minus 3, and I'm going to put this in a bracket when I multiply that out. So I could put it in a bracket there, or just when I multiply it to there, okay? And then on the bottom, so that's the kiss part, and there's the smile, okay? I'm going to multiply that times that. So I'll just write it out in that way there, and that's what I'm actually doing. So I'm going to then try and simplify it down a bit more than this here. So that's going to be 7x minus 3x minus 15, multiplying that bracket out, and I think at the bottom bracket I'm going to leave that one as it is like that, because that's just factorised out. I'm going to gather up the x terms here, so it's going to be 4x minus 15 all over x, and that's going to be x plus 5. Right, so that's me showing it as a single fraction. That's me showing it in its simplest form as well. So we've got 3 marks for this one. First mark that I'm going to get is for multiplying out the either the top or the bottom. So we'll take it for the top line first of all, okay? The second mark that I'm going to get is for getting this bottom part here. So, and the final mark that I'm going to get is for writing it in its simplest form. Okay, so that's some revision for the first unit of the National 5. Hope this helps you with your prelim, whether you're in my class or in any other class, and good luck in the prelims this week.